så fuldt beskrevet, hvordan hans forældre tog ham.
Yes, I am a Celtics fan, folks. I am the self-proclaimed #1 Boston Celtic fan of all time. Named after the greatest NBA coach of all time. Of course, we're talking about the late, the great Red Auerbach. Due to my devotion to the Celtics, employment by the Duck Tours, they call me Red Hour Quack. Oh, yeah. Back in the 80s, my parents brought me to the old Boston Garden for a Celtics game. At halftime, they left to go get me a couple of souvenirs, and sadly, they never returned. Abandoned by my parents at the Garden. Left to be raised by the great Celtic teams of the 80s. Bird, Parrish, McHale. It was awesome. Long story short, what happened was the 80s were fabulous. The 90s... I don't want to talk about the 90s. Yeah. They tore down the Boston Garden, Larry Bird left. And up until that point in my life, it had revolved around one bird. So, of course, I went on out and searched for another bird. The duck. That's right, the duck. You're sitting on it right now. Duck Tour drives on by. They see me sitting so sad and lonely curbside, pick me up, bring me back to the duck stop. Management comes on down, and to help me get back on my feet, they offer me a job. And my job today to give you all a tour of, we here at Boston Duck Tours, we do like to call this the tour of the 3 F's. Freedom. Boston, of course, the birthplace of the American Revolution, ultimately leading to America's freedom. Boston is also known as the city of firsts. Hands up if you like chocolate. Who likes chocolate? Chocolate, 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 chocolate. Way back in 1765, the city opened up the nation's very first ever chocolate factory. It was Baker's Chocolate down in Lower Mills in Dorchester. You know what else comes from Dorchester? New Kids on the Block. Is this anybody's first ever Boston Duck Tour? There you go, another first for the city right there. And of course the third half, what are we all going to have ourselves today? Yes, apparently 3 people are going to have fun today. What are we all going to have today? Have ourselves a little bit of fun. So with that, we cruise. I just ask you to please keep your arms, legs, heads, hands, feet, anything that you truly hold of value inside of the duck. This is a non-smoking duck. Please remain seated at all times for the courtesy of those folks seated around you. Please keep talking to a very bare minimum, a whisper, if any talking at all. And by far, folks, the biggest warning I will offer up is that while we're driving around town today, some people on these streets might be giving us crazy looks, and believe it or not, some people may even be quacking at us. Now, we're not going to ignore these people, are we? What are we going to do?
Quack back!
Darn tootin', we're going to quack, quack right back. So whenever you folks hear me say the magic word of alley-oop, I want to hear from you 2 loud quacks. Let's give it a try here, folks, loudly and proudly all together now here. Alley-oop!
Quack, quack!
All right, not bad, not bad. Some of you are so good at it, your lips didn't even move. You know who you are, all right? Now look, if you feel ridiculous quacking, we are going to look kind of goofy, but keep in mind, odds are you're never going to see these people again for the rest of your lives anyway, all right? So throw those inhibitions out the window here. Let her rip all together. Alley-oop! Pretty quack, but Quincy on the phone back there. That's cool. That's cool. All right, so we'll start our tour of the city in the Back Bay. That is the name of the neighborhood in which we are. It's a 450-acre neighborhood, and it's called the Back Bay for the very simple reason that that is exactly what this neighborhood used to be. It used to be a bay. This used to be the bay in back of Boston. From the beginning of this tour, I hesitated. Am I going to make it? No. From the beginning of this tour until we make our way up Beacon Street, I'll tell you when we get there, we are traveling on entirely man-made land. This was all once Charles River out here. If you look down Hereford Street down to your left, you can kind of see the river down there. That's about 4 blocks, 5 blocks down to the left-hand side. Now, when I say this was river, I'm not talking 40 feet of water. At high tide, it was around 5 feet of Charles River. At low tide, it was a huge, polluted mudflat. And the easiest way to deal with it, rather than trying to clean it up, was, of course, to cover it up. Now, we've been going around the Prudential Center the entire time. And back in the 1850s, what was here was actually a big train yard. And train is actually how they brought in all of the dirt to create the Back Bay. Now, where the dirt came from, Needham. Needham is a town about 10 miles behind us, 10 miles west of the city. 1859 is when they began filling in the Back Bay. 40 years, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. Every 45 minutes, a train full of dirt would come in, drop it off pretty much right here, head back out, do it all over again. And this is our little finished product going on right out here. As each piece of property was finished, it was auctioned off to the highest bidder. And churches actually put money down as well before they even had a building built, basically saying, look, here's some money, and give us first dibs when everything's finished. Now, do I have any runners or joggers on board? I average about one per tour. All right, bringing my average down. Any couch potatoes? Average about 15 or 20 of those. A couple of honest people, thank you. Right now, we are on the very final stretch of the world's oldest annual marathon. We're of course talking about the Boston Marathon. Take a look over your side of the duck on the street. Crosses the whole street right here. See this big yellow stripe? That is the actual finish line of the Boston Marathon. Where it finishes? Right here in Copley Square. Named for John Singleton Copley. He was a portrait painter during the Revolutionary War era. We'll actually see a statue of Mr. Copley just off to the right-hand side here, holding a palette of paints and a paintbrush, looking rather dapper in his ruffles. And the big centerpiece is this church off to the right. This is Trinity Church. Trinity Church has been here in the Back Bay since 1877. Same building, absolutely. The original building was over in, have you been here for a while? It was in Pittsburgh, actually. Pittsburgh, no. We're going to go by Faneuil Hall, the old State House later. That's where it used to be, and there was a big fire over there in the early 1870s. And long story short, 1877. Designed by Henry Hobson Richardson, and you'll see a statue off to the right. You'll see it once we pass the UPS trucks between them. Phillips Brooks, the first reverend of Trinity in the Back Bay. He wrote the words to the Christmas carol, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Now we're going to see this, we'll talk all about on the way back to the Duck Stop. Let's talk about this marathon here. The Boston Marathon is the world's oldest annual marathon. We first ran it in 1897. 15 people ran it that year, 10 of them finished. This past April 19th, it was the 114th annual running. Over 23,000 people ran the Boston Marathon this year, and over 97% finished. And Copley Square is the place to hang out and relax, get your Gatorade, the big metallic blankets to retain your body heat. That's the place to be. Now, generally speaking, as of late, it's been a nice 50-50 mix men and women in the marathon. But believe it or not, it wasn't until 1972 that women were allowed to run in the Boston Marathon. Yeah, in 1972... a keeper over here, huh? In 1972, 8 women officially entered, 8 women officially ran, all 8 of those women officially finished the Boston Marathon. And without those 8 brave ladies, we never ever would have had the one, the only, Rosie Ruiz. And this is how you run a marathon. This is record time here, folks. In 1980, Rosie was the official female winner for 8 days. And you ask yourself, why only 8 days? It's because after 8 days, everybody then realized she'd used the subway system for part of the race. You're really not allowed to do that, so they stripped her of her title. They did a background check on her, and as it turns out, to get into the Boston Marathon, she qualified by running in the New York City Marathon, and she took the train in that one, too. It's a marathon. It's 26.2 miles long. It is extremely doubtful that Rosie ran any more than 2 miles of the Boston Marathon. All downhill. Now, we all call it Marathon Monday, but officially what it's known as is Patriots Day. It's actually a statewide holiday. Only 2 states celebrate it in the country, Massachusetts and Maine. Maine, during the Revolutionary War, was actually part of Massachusetts. It commemorates the shot heard round the world, the very first shot fired out of Lexington Green back in 1775, marking the beginning of the Revolutionary War. I mean, that's, blah, blah, blah. Textbook speaking, Patriots Day. In all reality, what it is no work, it is no school. It is 10 a.m. marathon. It's also 11 a.m. baseball at Fenway. Awesome. What's the best part about 11 a.m. baseball? 9 a.m. beer. 9 a.m. beer. And the game is out by like 2. Unless they play the Yankees, then the game's out by like 7 o'clock that night. Now, every third Monday in April is when we have the marathon. If you look off to the left, every Saturday prior to Marathon Monday is when the Swan boats officially open up in the lagoon of the public garden. They're pedal-powered boats. You pay $2 or $3, they'll take you on a 15, 20-minute little spin around the lagoon. Started by Robert Paget in 1877. Every year since, they've actually been owned and operated by the same Paget family. 5 generations have owned and operated those Swan boats. Now this turn is Charles Street. And we call this Charles Street because it's roughly where the shoreline of the Charles River used to come up to the city. A very good rule of thumb within Boston proper is that flat level land generally tends to be man-made. So look at the big difference between what we've been traveling on here to the left, for the most part, compared to what's going on here to the right. Not flat, not level. That's Boston Common. That's a 48-acre park. It's the nation's oldest public park, 1634. That's part of original Boston. Now all of this talk of, original Boston, man-made land, it really just begs the question, how big is Boston? How big was Boston? How big is Boston today? We are 48 square miles. We are a 48 square mile city with 107 Dunkin' Donuts. Now, we were founded back in 1630. Believe it or not, we were nothing but a 1.5 square mile peninsula. And when I say peninsula, don't think Florida. Florida very long and slender. Boston, very short and stout, kind of like a frying pan. Basically is how we were shaped. And the panhandle, just a short, narrow strip of land that we called Boston Neck. And that's what connected the 1.5 square miles to the mainland. Now, the very first ever European to set foot out here was back in 1625. The guy's name was William Blackston. Came from England. The guy really hated people. He got on a boat over in England, sailed across the Atlantic, came out here, was all by himself with his Bibles and his cattle for 5 years. And he names this 1.5 square miles originally Shawmut Peninsula. Shawmut was a local native Algonquin Indian language for living waters. The river was out here to the left. There was the harbor on the other side. There used to be a fresh-flowing spring in the middle of Beacon Hill out here as well. And there also used to be a real pond in the middle of the common. You'll see a man-made pond about 2/3 up the hill. So we were Shawmut for 5 years. Now in 1630, that's when Boston became Boston. About 150 Puritans come on over from Boston, England. Named the new town after the old. And when they got here, this hill we are in right now used to be about 60 feet taller. And what our founding Puritans put on top of that was a 60-foot tall wooden tower. On top of that was a big old bucket full of tar, oil, some sort of flammable material, and anytime the city would have been in danger, they would light it on fire. It was a beacon. This neighborhood was called Beacon Hill. That pond that we used to have, the real one, down here to the right. That's where it used to be. That's obviously man-made today. It's called Frog Pond. But where Frog Pond was once a real pond filled with frogs. Oh yeah. These frogs, like the size of chickens, they were huge. And they became kind of a nuisance to the city, so they're not there anymore. Delicious. Yeah. Now in 1630, that's when Boston becomes Boston. About 150 Puritans come on over from Boston, England, named the new town after the old. And did I tell you why this is called Beacon Hill? Just kind of, no. The beacon of fire, yeah, the big beacon of fire they put out here. It's a good thing, because I'm not. There are times where you'll tell the same story twice on tour. We're going to go to Charlestown later. We had a driver a couple of years ago take her same one tour to Charlestown twice. They looked at her like she was nuts. It happens, you know? All right, so on top of Beacon Hill today, the biggest house in town, our State House. Now, the red brick is the original building designed by Charles Bulfinch, the nation's very first professional architect. July 4th of 1795, the cornerstone was brought up to the top of Beacon Hill by 15 white horses representing the 15 states in our union at the time. Paul Revere, Sam Adams at the top of the hill. This entrance here to the left, you can go on in there and actually get a totally free guided tour of that building. Now Now we're going to go by the North End a little later on. It's the oldest neighborhood in Boston. Back in the 1780s, it's a half square mile. It was becoming one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the entire world. And right around that time, there was this group of 6. They called themselves the Mount Vernon Proprietors. And their goal, their dream was a big city upon a hill. And of course, the hill they had their eyes on was Beacon Hill. They came in, started plowing things down so they could start building. I'd say about 85% of these buildings have been around since at least 1820. Here to the right, the solid green doorway, 122 Bowdoin Street, from 1945 to 1963. That's where John F. Kennedy claimed legal residency right there. 3rd floor apartment right up there. Johnny, I'll see you in 2 hours! Buddy Johnny back there wanted to talk. Now, who originally lived out here in Beacon Hill were the rich, the powerful, the wealthy, collectively known as the Boston Brahmins, the Lowell family, the Cabots, the Saltonstalls. John Hancock, first signer of the Declaration of Independence, lived right on top of Beacon Hill. Now, this section we're coming down a little different. This is the north slope of Beacon Hill, and prior to the Civil War, it was one of the largest entirely free to black populations in our country. The only one that was bigger than this at the time, Philadelphia. All sorts of stops on the Underground Railroad were located out here on the north slope of Beacon Hill. The safest stop on the railroad was this guy Lewis. It was Lewis and Harriet. Lewis and Harriet Hayden. And why their house was so safe and so different from the rest is what they kept right by their front door on the inside of their house. 2, one on each side of the doorway, large barrels full of gunpowder. And anytime slave catchers would come to the front door demanding the slaves be sent back, the 2 of them would answer the door holding lit candles, threatening to blow up their entire house, killing everybody and everything around it. Never did do it. House is still out there today at 66 Phillip Street. It's still there. Yeah. It's owned by Brinks now. This church up to the right-hand side here, that's the old West Church. That was an actual stop on the Underground Railroad. Also in 1960, where John F. Kennedy cast his ballot in the presidential election. All right, so these Puritans, right? They give us the name Boston because of Boston, England. They give us the name Beacon Hill, that big beacon of fire they put on top. They also give Boston its most popular nickname. What is Boston's most popular nickname?
Beantown.
Bingo. Beantown. A rather religious group of people, these Puritans. We're talking anywhere between 3 and 6 hours of church services daily. If you didn't go to church, they would actually throw you in jail. Once you got to church, they would lock the door behind you so you couldn't get out. No physical labor allowed at all on the Sabbath. Now that includes cooking as well. So what these families would do to eat the day before the Sabbath, they would all put these big pots of beans outside over open fires. They'd cook a few days at a time. And anytime sailors would come in from the harbor, just by the smell of the beans in the air, they knew where they were right away. They were in Beantown. That's where the name Beantown comes from. But get this. Did you know that if you go to your grocery store today and you buy a can of baked beans, each can has exactly 239 beans in it? Yeah! You know why there isn't one more? Because if there's one more, they'd be too fatty. And seriously, folks, if you didn't like that one, the rest of this tour is going to seem like an absolute eternity. Red Auerbach Way here to the right-hand side, leading you right into the TD Garden. Home to your 17-time NBA champion Boston Celtics. Yeah, their neighbor's a lovely bridge. The Leonard P. Zachem Bunker Hill Memorial Bridge. This is currently the world's widest cable-stayed bridge. It's 10 lanes of traffic wide. If you get down here at night, it turns purple. Underneath the inverted Ys, there are lavender lights. There are white lights for the majority, but there are a couple of lavender lights. It's a great bridge to drive over at night if you can. Very short, but it's purple. Come on. So there's going to be plenty of that bridge from here on out. There's the river. This is the river off to the right. This is basically it. The river's 80 miles long. This is it. This is where it ends, right here. Underneath the Zachem Bridge is where the river truly ends. But this is Nashua Street Park to the right. We're going to be going around North Point Park across the river to the right, and it is all part of the Big Dig. Big Dig. Anybody not know what the Big Dig is? Because if you don't, you're definitely better off. All right? The Big Dig, the nation's largest public works project in history. Second largest in the entire world, just behind the Yangtze River Dam in China. Been going on for
30.
Ever. 27 years, yeah. It's a giant construction project designed to improve traffic flow throughout the city of Boston. Come back to this spot in about 2 hours. That statement will be hilarious. They tore down old elevated Interstate 9. Well, I'll tell you all about it later. It's 2 tunnels, it's 1 bridge, and it's a bunch of park spaces. That's truly the Big Dig in a nutshell. Here's our Museum of Science here to the left. You can do all sorts of sciencey things there. Check out a IMAX movie about whales, planetarium, and they have monkeys. Yeah, who doesn't like monkeys, you know? No, in the planetarium. That'd be awesome. That'd be the best planetarium ever. All right, who's ready to take this thing into the river? Like, have your heads out there, I like that. All right, let's bring this to the river here. Now, before we do splash down into the water, we'll go over the safety features aboard the duck. First and foremost, above our heads on the inside, we have life preservers. Children's life preservers, the smaller ones here to the right. These go up to 90 pounds. Got a life ring above my head right here. There's the life ring on the back of the duck, the back left, Montana, just behind you right back there. Lower. There you go. Also underneath the last seat driver's side on the floor is a fire extinguisher. I have a second fire extinguisher here to my right. We have full radio capability. Radio the Coast Guard, State Police, anybody who monitors a marine radio can radio other ducks, as well as back to the duck stop. And in the unlikely event of an emergency, the exits. Yeah, they're everywhere. Over the sides of the duck. And don't worry about this area back here. This is part of the tour. A little construction going on out here. They're building a big skateboard park is what they're building. They're just breaking ground. It's going to be the nation's... What is this? Dude, that is just weird. Yeah, that's what I thought. Is that your real hair? Sure.
To the barber the other day, said, "Get a little off the floor." He said,
Hey, my friends from Florida here want to know where they can get one of those caps. Oh, apparently, where in Florida? Daytona Beach. This guy's on the clock right now, you know.
"Any of you ladies want to take a chance on a blanket?"
Dude, it's a family tour. All right, there's one duck coming out of the river, then it's going to be our turn to splash on down. But yeah, so this is going to be a 40,000 square foot skateboard park. Huge. Second largest. Nation's largest, Louisville, Kentucky, 60,000 square feet. Right here. Right here. You can see the front of the fence up. The big black fence post right there. Go right around. Very cool. BMX bikes, inline skates, and skateboards. It'll be open 24 hours a day. It's going to cost the kids to use it nothing. totally free. Yeah. Look,
Free like the free?
for the first year, but then after that, it's it's a
Free like the 15?
installment. Yeah. The they always say it's about location, location, location. This skate park is strategically located right across the river from the Spalding Physical Rehabilitation Hospital and Mass General Hospital right out there. So this is Plucky Ruffles right here. He comes from a very long line of cruise ship entertainers. His great grandfather, the lounge jack on the Mayflower. What's up, man?
What's up, Mr. Allen?
How are ya?
Having fun out here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Cool.
We were just talking to Salty Magoo. He's weird.
Yeah, he's a strange guy. Salty Magoo. He's not a driver.
There's a train coming. I can't hear you now. Get out of the door. You may hear a clunking sound. That's the prop. C1, and let's lay on the horn. And one more sound of the horn here as we exit, just for added safety. Welcome to the Charles River. This is top speed right here. It's like 4 horsepower. It's an 8-cylinder engine. I don't know the answer to that. Just get adjusted to our new surroundings out here. That's a jail there to the left. Yeah. This is Suffolk County. I'll show you the old jail later on. This has been open for 20 years, and the reason it looks like this is actually the neighborhood behind it to the right. That's the West End. Basically, long story short, they were given final approval of the design of the building going in their backyard. So they didn't really want an ugly, jail-like looking building in the backyard. So that's what they came up with. Not half bad. Oh no, it's got bars all right. Yeah, prime real estate, right? You think the view's nice there? How about this? If you look to the trees up to the right at about 2 o'clock, you'll see a building kind of all by itself. Has that orange horizontal stripe. That's Cambridge out there. That's the Cambridge jail. The inmates there actually held above that orange stripe. The top 4 floors. Penthouse suites. Yeah, it's amazing. The view of the fireworks from there on the 4th of July, awesome. No questions, please. Don't ask. I've heard stories. Alright, so we're going to be heading under the Lynchmere Viaduct, which is this big concrete structure here left to right. 1908 they built basically the dam. This is the Charles River Lock and Dam, and while we're out here on the river, we'll get further upriver, we'll get a nice little view of Beacon Hill. With the exception of Beacon Hill, all of this land we see while out here on the river is man-made. Everything but Beacon Hill. East Cambridge, Fenway, Kenmore, the Back Bay, the West End, the jail, Mass General Hospital, all of it. This is no longer a working, operable lock. The new lock system we have is behind us under this acre bridge. As we get to the end of the lock, it's actually a big blind corner. So I'm going to have to lay on the horn just one final time, just in case there's anybody out there coming this way to let them know we're coming through. 3, 2, 1. On the back side of the museum right out here. Oh man. and it poured for like half an hour. Woo, it's crazy. I think this is the weather we're going to have over the next few days at least, so. Oh, it's going to be gorgeous. Look at this. Love being out here. So there's the back bay out to the left of the two tallest buildings, the one to the right, all those antennae on top, big one right in the middle. That's the Prudential Tower. That's where the tour started. Just a little idea as to where we are in the city right now. What part of New York are you guys from originally? Tip of Manhattan. On the Bronx side. Nice. I like it down there. What's that? I've heard of Brooklyn. Yeah, I've heard of Brooklyn. Not to be confused with Brookline. No. I was down in my favorite Manhattan store, my favorite, the city as they call it. I like my mom's from Yonkers originally, and what's that? Scottsdale. There you go, right there. Absolutely. Yeah, you're in the Bronx. Come on, come to the program here. I was down in the Comedy Cellar, I think. One of those where all those comics got their start. And so my buddy worked at a bar called Joe O's over in the Hotel Pennsylvania for a while, and he had to hook up. So we got some free tickets, went into the comedy show, and there were a couple people you'd heard of. Daryl Hammond from Saturday Night Live was there, and a couple other comics. And we're sitting there, and the MC comes up, and they always kind of do their thing, and this place holds no more than 200 people. And the MC comes up to keep the crowd rolling, and then introduces the next comic and gives him a big hoop-de-doo to kind of build it up. And he gets up there and he's like, all right, well, I really have nothing else to say. This next comic really needs no introduction, so. And then walk up the stage. And who walked onto this tiny little stage from here to the front of the duckaway? Jerry Seinfeld. It was the craziest thing. I mean, Seinfeld tickets on Broadway, go for like $300, $400. And he was trying out new material. I guess he lives in the Village, and he was coming in to just try new material. And there were definitely a couple of jokes that he told that were not that funny. And he acknowledged that fact. He says it, and I laugh because it's Seinfeld. You laugh at the guy, and we're all kind of like, and he just looks at us. He goes, all right, I guess that wasn't all that funny. He'll just scratch it off his notepad. But yeah, I like to get down there whenever I can. Katz's Deli. That's where I like to go. I'm hungry. Now, if we leave now to get down there, we can be there this time tomorrow. Are these ducks from the war? These ducks, this duck is not an original. We have 28 ducks in our fleet now. 16 are replicas, and we have 25 ducks, I guess. So 9 are originals. And 4 years ago, we were an entire original fleet. And you'll know if you're in the city tomorrow, they're not running today because the museum is closed. The Museum of Science is closed for the day for their Employee Appreciation Day. They throw them a big party. And they're smaller and have an outback caged-in seating area. Those are the ones built up in Pontiac, Michigan between 42 and 45. And the big reason why we went from original to replicas is, one of the big reasons is because, actually it's just a big number of reasons. Down in, it might have been Long Island Sound a couple of years ago, there was a big ferry that capsized. A big wave came in and the thing, and it turns out that there were just way too many people on it. But they weren't over what's the word looking for? There were, it's the capacity, thank you, yes. They were not over capacity. It said, 200 people, we'll say. But the average weight of a passenger, according to the Coast Guard up until a few years ago, the average weight of one person, they said, was 115 pounds. Right, and I'm sure that was on the books for 70 years ago. And now it's actually up to 185 pounds, they say, is the average weight of a person. So That was a big thing. And our smaller ducks, we had to revamp the whole thing. We had to add an extra, a tail end to it, and but these are all weight tested. I mean, you can see they passed Coast Guard inspection here. But another big reason why we actually are switching ducks is for environmental reasons. Now, the smaller ducks that we have, the engine that powers those, no joke, the same engine that powered the old Chevy Nova, all right? And that runs on regular gasoline, and at the end of the day, we'll do 5 tours, you go back to the gas station, put in anywhere between 17 and 22 gallons of gas every single day. And that costs the company a lot, but and that's a big toll on the environment that takes right there. So these ducks we have here, we actually run these ducks on diesel, and we have our own company come in and fill these up every morning with biodiesel. So it's more eco-friendly duck tour that we offer up right here. So we do have 9 of the original ducks that never did see any military action because they were built in 1945 and they were surplus. And the duck tours are all over the country now. We've only been in operation for 16 years. We are by far and away one of the most popular duck tours in the country. But the oldest would be Branson, Missouri, and the Wisconsin Dells. They've been operating ducks for about 50 years in both of those places right now. So they are all over the place. Now, as we get a little further ahead, out to the left-hand side, we'll actually see Beacon Hill. See the train pulling into the Charles stop. So there's Beacon Hill. And if we get a little further ahead, you'll see the gold dome of the State House up there. There it is. That's real gold up there. 13 pounds of 23 karat gold leaf. That's relieved in 98, 12 years ago. Now we're going to head onto the Longfellow Bridge here, named after Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. There are 4 big towers up top in the middle, 2 smaller ones on each end, 8 in all. They all kind of look like salt and pepper shakers, so locally some people do refer to this as the Salt and Pepper Bridge. These carvings on the strongholds, these are bows of ships. Specifically, these are bows of Viking ships. Now, when they built this thing 100 years ago, a lot of people actually believed that Vikings were the first Europeans to travel up the Charles River. You know how much evidence they had to prove their Viking theory? None. Nothing. They found Viking coins in Rhode Island, down in Pawtucket. So like, oh, they probably came up here for a Sox game. I don't know. So to honor the Vikings that never made it, these are bows of Viking ships. The big waves, the shields. There's some on the other side as well. Even though they're, historically inaccurate, I do think they're architecturally pretty cool looking. There you go. A little better view of it. A little cleaner on this side as well. Alright, so the college kids are back. 250,000 of them come here every single September. It's awesome. Our population in like a week goes from 600,000 people to about 850,000 people. It gets pretty, it's pretty crazy. It really is, and it's a huge noticeable difference too because, a lot of the students don't even bother bringing cars, but the lines at bars and restaurants, just the sheer number of people in the city. But it's really great. It is. It's over 50 colleges and universities, and these students every year pump into the local economy over $7 billion every year. I mean, this is a very much college-oriented city. Out to the right, see that building kind of all by itself, has that golf ball on top of it. The golf ball is actually a radar, and that is the green building sitting out there on the campus for MIT. So that's what the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is today. The most expensive school to attend in Boston now beats out Harvard by almost $1,000. Boston University, BU, over $52,000 a year to attend BU. Room and board. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. Room and board. Absolutely. But if this is it here to the right, that's the Harvard Bridge out there, and basically all of the buildings on the other side of it. That's BU. The building behind the sailboat right there, kind of all by itself, that's the School of Law. The 3 identical buildings to the left of that are dorms. The biggest one out there was a big fortress. That's the School of Management right there. So that's all BU. Harvard is about a half a mile upriver, so not too far. What's that?
There's a thing there on the left.
What, the Citgo sign, big square? That's the Citgo sign right there. Love that thing. That's always associated with Fenway Park right there. The big square triangle, it lights up, but I'm sure the next couple of weeks it will be, they're replacing all of the bulbs, so it's not going to be lit at night. But to the left of the Citgo sign, you'll see a flag waving in the wind, and just to the left of that, above the lower rooftops, a couple of sets of stadium lights. That's Fenway Park out there. That opened up on April 20th back in 1912. It's the nation's oldest professional baseball park. There was a big movie premiere out there last night, the new Ben Affleck movie called The Town, which will be out today, I think, actually, is the first day. It's the 15th, I think it's today. They had a big movie premiere there, Ben Affleck, like Lively, some of the actors. So, it looks like a pretty decent movie. And then we have the back bay skyline out here to the right of the two tallest buildings. Again, the one to the right, that's the Prudential Tower. The building just to the left of the Prudential Tower has that rounded, the glass building, has that rounded top, little spiky things in the middle. That is 111 Huntington. That's the name, that's the address. It's offices. It's not really all that exciting. But I did recently learn that people who work there actually have a nickname for the building. They call it the Juicer. I've also heard R2-D2 and the deodorant stick, but I do like the Juicer. And the building with the black stripe down the side, that's the John Hancock Tower, tallest building in New England, 63 stories tall. Has anybody ever been to Boston for the 4th of July before? It's a madhouse out here. It truly is. And depending on who's performing with the Pops or what year they're celebrating, there'll be anywhere between 400 and 800,000 people out here, and 1,000 boats just kind of right here. This building up to the right along the shoreline right there between the islands, that round building. Yeah, the round one, that's the Hatch Memorial Shell. It's a concert hall. It's kind of like a hollowed out cantaloupe on the other side. That's where the Pops are every 4th of July. The firework barges they bring in, they anchor probably about 400 yards behind us right over there. And the number of boats, it's been said on some years that you can actually get from Boston to Cambridge jumping from boat to boat to boat to boat. There's just so many boats out here. It's really an experience. It really is. And if you ever decide you want to come to Boston for the 4th of July and you don't really feel like dealing with the crowds and the lines in the restroom and whatnot, your best bet's going to be a community boating. I think their tickets are $75, but community boating, they've got, it's their own property out there, and they limit it, so it's very comfortable to enjoy the fireworks and listen to the Pops. But I do love this place for that reason. It's just really nice to have sailboats out here in the river. Adds to the look. But does anybody sail? Any sailors out there? This place, it's the nation's oldest public boating program. They've been on the river since 1941. Anybody in the world 10 years old and up, you can get membership here. Now, an adult membership this year is $260, and it runs from April 1st through October 31st, or a year to the day minus the winters, $260. But in 1941, they started this just for the kids. The kids used to come down here. They would build their own sailboats and then race them right here. They don't build them any longer, they still race. As long as you fall between the ages of 10 and 18, an entire 10-week summertime membership, learn how to sail, windsurf, and kayak for the price of $1. $1. Kids love this place right here. Senator John Kerry and Leonard Nimoy. Spock used to sail here when they were little kids. Back under the bridge we go. Now the reason I point out that jail in the beginning of the water portion of the tour is to give you something to compare the old jail with. Anybody been to the old jail recently? Makes a difference, no. It is definitely one of my favorite buildings in the city. It's just so unique in its architecture and what it actually was and is. All right, so coming up on the right, the tallest glass building out there is Mass General Hospital. There it is. Mass Eye and Ear Infirmary. And as they just come up here, this big gray glass building, actually the brick one, then this big gray glass building right here. There it is. And see this stone building set back right there behind the trees? Right there, all those chimneys on top? Big khaki color cupola right there. That granite building from 1851 to 1990 was the old Charles Street Jail. It was condemned by a federal judge who deemed the building to be inhabitable. Inhumane living conditions. Absolutely no way that anybody could live there. Therefore, they've turned it into a hotel. It's called the Liberty Hotel. The Liberty Hotel opened up almost 3 years ago. The very first ever jail-turned-luxury hotel in the country. Prior to the grand opening, they brought in Buddhist monks to give the building an exorcism. Oh yeah. 2 bars and a restaurant. Their names are Alibi, Clink, and the restaurant is Scampo, which is Italian slang for escape. If you're looking to grab a cocktail or something like that later on today, that place it's really cool. It's one of a kind. It's extremely unique. And you know when you go in that it was a jail. Now, it's not cheesy and hokey. They've done it in a very respectful manner, as it should be. But you go in there and you'll find some original jail cells in the lobby. There is a pictorial history of the building in there. Some of the original catwalks are up there where the guards used to patrol. Framed mugshots of celebrities in the bar downstairs. There's a restaurant, the bar Alibi, actually. I'm dying to get there. I was reading the other day, they have a cocktail there they call the Green Mile. And they have like gin, martinis out there. They make it with Hendrick's gin, a little sriracha hot sauce. And instead of olive juice, they put in pickle juice and a big pickle spear. I like pickles and gin. Who's to say I'm not going to love them together, right? But yeah, it's really cool in there. Even if you're not going for a drink, it's worth checking out. If you have any questions after the tour about where to go, where to eat, where to see, whatever, please, I feel free to come ask me. We're more than happy to send you to some great places around the city here. Now, the Charles River, throughout the years, has gotten an extremely bad reputation as being an extremely dirty river. Yes, it was. And it was not good. Cambridge over here used to be big-time industry, paint factories and slaughterhouses and whatnot. And, 100 years ago, with all of the industrial waste they would create, it was actually encouraged to dump it in the river. There's video footage out there somewhere of these 2 guys working at one of these slaughterhouses, coming down to the river with a big bucket full of stuff, dumping it in the river, then leaving, coming back like an hour later, and setting that portion of the river on fire. Flammable river out here at one point, yeah. Back in the 60s, the mayor of Boston was Kevin White. And Kevin White had really kind of had enough. 1965, the Standells, California-based band, the Standells, released their hit song, Dirty Water. Love that, Dirty Water, Boston, you're my home. That's how the song goes. They're pretty spot on. Now, 3 years later is when Kevin White steps into office, and he really just kind of had enough of all the bad-mouthing going on about how dirty the river was. He wanted to prove to the public how clean the river was, and the best way he knew how was going to swim in it. So he jumped in the river in front of the media, big media frenzy out here, jumps in, splish splash, 10 minutes, gets out, dries off, and within the hour, they took him over to Mass General Hospital for a tetanus shot. That's how clean this was in the 60s. It's great. And this is decades of neglect. And finally, in 1994, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, they were all in the country grading bodies of water. The grade this river received in 1994, a D+. This was a D+ body of water. It was an embarrassment to the city. And I honestly feel as though it being made public was the best thing that could have happened to the river because it shamed us into doing something. So since 94, efforts made by the EPA, the Charles River Watershed Association, and the Department of Conservation and Recreation over the past 16 years, no other major city river in the entire country has actually improved in cleanliness more so than the Charles River. They now say you can safely swim in the Charles River. I've I've been swimming in the Charles River, and I'm totally fine. Thanks. It's definitely come a long way. You can swim out here, you can swim in the harbor. I mean, some days are definitely better than others, but once a year. How often do I get a tetanus shot? Just 2 thus far. So far, so good. But again, Mass General's right there, so it's okay. What's that? Yeah, but like to double up when you're swimming in the Charles there, you know. Alright, so back to the old lock-in dam we go here. Now this lock, again, opened up 102 years ago, 1908. No longer operable. The new lock system we have opened up in January of 1978. February of 1978, the blizzard of 78. We had at one point here in Boston over 20 inches of snow in less than 24 hours. Now, the new lock system we have has 3 locks to it, but 6 pumps as well. And when those 6 pumps are going full board, they can physically just suck 3.5 million gallons of water per minute out of the river and dump it out into Boston Harbor. You can see where the high water mark is out here. They've been known to drain the river before big storms, snow, rain, whatever, and I've seen it down as much as 1.5 feet less than what we're at right now. And without these locks opening up a month prior to the blizzard, you can imagine this water just would have flooded up, would have flooded out, would have flooded over easily into the city out here. The duck tours, had they been in operation back then, certainly would have been necessary. Only twice in our 16 years have the duck tours actually been on call because of heavy rains. And the second time was actually earlier in March. This past March was the rainiest March in our city's history. Second rainiest month ever, at over 14 inches of rain this past March. And that was all within 2 weeks. And Wayland, there's a town not too far west, it must be about 10 miles, 12 miles west. Wayland, there's a section of Wayland that is actually surrounded by lower ground. It kind of comes in, goes down, and then goes up. That's what the section of the town is. Cars and buses, any kind of motor vehicle could not get into Wayland. So they called us, and we sent a couple of ducks. And we ran from 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. And we got the kids to school. They hated seeing the ducks. They thought it was like a snow day in the middle of March. No school! But we got the kids to school, got everybody to work. And it was really nice. It was glad we could do something like that for the town. We are in 4-wheel drive, going to get us right back up the duck ramp. And that's the end of the river there to the right. That brick building is where those pumps are located, obviously under the water. That's the very end of the 80-mile Charles. Let me just lay on the horn one final time here. Disengage the prop here to my left. Sliver down. Marine radio off. 2-wheel drive. Regular drive. You know he's bored. I think he's lost it. No, you don't. This is like solitary confinement over here. He knows what he did to deserve it. You got a rag out there now. And since you're not doing it, what have you seriously done today? Other than this? Did you have lunch?
That's all I've got today.
There's no bathroom on that thing either. No.
See how old I am? You know what happens in Florida, right?
Oh, come on, dude. Jeez. This guy, my first duck tour, my earliest duck tour memory is 9 years ago before I got the job. It was the St. Patrick's Day parade. And this guy was driving the Green Duck, Charlie River, through Southie during the parade. And he had the Boston Bruins, part of the hockey team, on the duck. Now, the Bruins decided they were going to drink a lot of beer throughout the... How long's the parade? A few hours, right? 3 hours. And they drank a lot of beer on that duck. Now, like I said, there are no restrooms on this duck right here. And apparently, how long did you run those bilge pumps when you got back to the garage?
They went on board with a case of them. They got off the duck with 2 cases of them. I said to my wife, no, one of them asked me to stop to go to the bathroom. She says, we're even bilges.
Oh, these people look lost here to the left. It's weird. Hi there. Okay then. Do it themselves. There are cars that follow us every now and then, thinking if they follow us, they'll be able to get to the duck stop. But half the time they follow us, they end up to the duck ramp, and that's when they realize that that's not where they should be going in their car. Now we are in Cambridge, and what used to be home in Cambridge, and actually right next to MIT's campus, and it's now just a few miles north of the city up in Revere. Is anybody at all familiar with the New England Confectionery Company? Have you ever eaten Necco wafers? That's what Necco stands for. It's a candy factory. They make Necco wafers, Sky bars, Clark bars, little conversation hearts on Valentine's Day. That's Necco. Now, if you don't know what a Necco wafer is, the best way to describe these things, they're kind of like tasty poker chips. Right? And when Necco moved in one of their desk drawers, they actually found a roll of Necco wafers dated back to be about 40 years old, still as good as the day they were made. That is gross. He's our sidewalk driver today, and we normally run out of the Museum of Science here to the left, but again, it's their Cast Appreciation Day, so all the employees have a big party inside, and the museum's closed, so therefore we can't run out of the Museum of Science. I'll come into work and, come in and do 5 tours, but there is a position of sidewalk driver, and his job right now basically is a spare driver. Should a duck, get a flat tire or something happen, and we need a new duck for the tour, he'll come save somebody, and if not, he just kind of hangs out there, sits there, and loses his mind, apparently. So, yeah, that's what he's doing. Now, one town north of us here is Somerville. Invented in Somerville, marshmallow fluff. Spreadable marshmallow goodness. Add peanut butter, put it between bread. It's called a...
Nutter butter.
Fluffer nutter. Fluffer nutter. I like... At least you didn't say s'more. All right, I'll give you another butter. You're on the right path right there. I had a woman on tour the other day go, a sandwich. I'm like, well, technically yes, but a fluffer nutter. A fluffer nutter. Hold on to your hats. It might get a little windy up here. They have a big fluff festival, a fluffstival, if you will, every year in Somerville. It's now made up in Revere, or Lynn, a couple of towns north. up there? There it is. That's the steeple to the Old North Church. The church has been there since 1723. On April 18th of 1775, Paul Revere met up with the sexton of that church, Robert Newman, and warned him that if the British Army was coming from Boston Common entirely by foot out to Lexington and Concord, to display one lantern in that church steeple, coming by way of Charles River and then getting off and marching, display two lanterns, thus the whole 1 by land, 2 by sea. Paul Revere was then rowed across Boston Harbor here into Charlestown, got on a horse that he borrowed from the Deacon John Larkin, and set out through the countryside in the middle of the night on his horse. And legend has it, riding throughout the countryside in the middle of the night in the darkness, yelling, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" And it is legend because it's actually false for two reasons. Number one, Paul Revere did not ride around yelling anything. If he's yelling anything, he's going to immediately be captured. And number two, if he were going to yell anything at all, he certainly would not have been yelling, "The British are coming, the British are coming," because everybody in town was British. Oh yeah, they were already here. They would have thought he was a little crazy. He simply went around letting people he knew he could trust that the redcoats were coming on up and the regulars were coming. This tannish house here to the left has been here since 1785. It's the Warren Tavern. Both Washington and Revere used to have drinks at the Warren Tavern right there. We've got some traffic ahead of us right here. Some strange reason, but take a look to the left here. Look up the hill to the left, to the top. You'll see it. Little work being done to it right now. But that's the Bunker Hill Monument. Right up there on that hill on June 17th of 1775, the Battle of Bunker Hill took place. It was the first, It was the first major battle in the Revolutionary War. It was by far the bloodiest battle as well. What's going on here? There's an accident. What's happening here? This is Charlestown. This is the borough of Boston, if you will. But this is known as Charlestown right here. Are you planning on walking the Freedom Trail while you're in town? Okay. It's 2.5 miles. It's all the historic hot spots. Big red stripe. It does take you here to Charlestown. But right now, we're going to hang a right, then a left, and we're going to head over Boston Harbor. And we're going to bring it on down.